Check out this map of Africa. Back then, most of this continent had been carved up by European powers. Belgium had a big swath of Africa right here, where the modern-day Democratic Republic of the Congo is. What Belgium did in the Congo is shocking and hard to get your head around. It's terrible, in fact. But Belgium's horrendous actions in the Congo would lead to this.
I would definitely take the Johnson & Johnson vaccine.
The FDA has just approved a third vaccine.
Let's talk about the J&J,
The Johnson & Johnson coronavirus vaccine.
por Johnson & Johnson von Johnson & Johnson.
제약 존슨&존슨과
Johnson & Johnson's vaccine.
The new Johnson & Johnson vaccine is a game changer for the fight against COVID-19. It is cheaper. It can be shipped without having to be frozen, so it's way more durable. It's made of really advanced, sophisticated technology that allows you to just get one shot of it instead of the 2 doses from the previous ones.
This version requires just 1 dose.
That's a big deal when you're trying to vaccinate literally billions of people. And so to understand how this vaccine that is being rolled out by Johnson & Johnson, a New Jersey-based company, how that is connected to Belgium in the late 1800s in the Congo Basin, you have to understand the story of how this sophisticated technology was developed and by whom.
One man at the Conference of Berlin walked away with his own private colony and showed what colonialism looked like at its very worst.
This date marked the beginning of white penetration into the black heart of Africa.
African sleeping sickness is caused by the protozoan parasite Trypanosoma.
Johnson & Johnson, the most trusted name in surgical dressing.
Let me tell you a story of one of the most insane and horrendous versions of European colonialism in Africa.
The 1880s and 90s were years of terrifying upheaval in Africa.
It starts with this guy, King Leopold II. He was the king of Belgium. And by the way, this wasn't like 300 years ago. This is like the mid to late 1800s. Belgium wasn't a big player in the colonizing game, not like France and Britain, but Leopold sort of wanted to be. He wanted to be a big boy imperialist nation, and so he actually went to Spain and Portugal, whose empires were sort of declining at the time, and offered to buy some of their colonial possessions. They didn't agree, so Leopold decided to take things into his own hands, like literally on his own. He himself, privately, would create a colony for Belgium. Okay, so quick pause. I just got an email from Morning Brew, which is a thing that gets sent to my inbox every morning and is a digest of all of the news that is happening, but it's not just like the sad, depressing news. It's like actually interesting stuff. I don't like going down the rabbit hole of trying to find out what news I should be reading. So much of it is like noise and it doesn't help me understand the world. Morning Brew just gives me a digest, like a Spark Notes version. Oh, it's literally free. Like there's no money involved here. Like all you do is sign up and it takes 15 seconds to sign up and then you get this in your inbox. I feel like my mornings before this were a little bit more scattered of like, what should I be reading this morning? I'm not gonna listen to like a 20-minute podcast. What can I sort of breeze through? Morning Brew just aggregates it all into one place. Morning Brew sponsored this video. They don't have any sign-up deal or discount because it's literally free. Like you pay 0 money. You just go sign up. The link is in my description. When you click that link, it helps support this channel, but it also gets you signed up for this like very, very good quality newsletter. I love it. Thank you, Morning Brew, for sponsoring this video. Let's get back to the story and talk about what is going on in the Belgian Congo. So Leopold decided to take things into his own hands with his own money and his own army. He knew he would need some support for this in terms of just like approval. So he created an organization that he called the International African Society. Leopold builds this organization and says that it's meant to be a research and philanthropy organization with a mission to explore the world for good and for science. But soon, Leopold would use this organization to get his wish of being a big boy colonizer. It was 1884 when a bunch of the European and Ottoman and American powers who were colonizing Africa got together And they decided that they needed some sort of unifying policy of how they were going to go into Africa, how trade was going to work, but they wanted to work together as they carved up the continent of Africa. Leopold gets up at this conference, it was in Berlin, and he says, listen, I've got this organization, I would love to take this organization of mine and go and take over a huge swath of Central Africa. And everyone's like, you mean like Belgium's gonna go take over the Congo? And he's like, no, not Belgium, me. I'll do it with my own money. And the European powers are sort of like, okay, like how much harm can one guy and his NGO do going into Congo? So Leopold gets his dream. He gets international approval to go take over a swath of Africa that is 76 times larger than Belgium. He would call his new private colony the Congo Free State. Well, you know what happens next. He doesn't improve the lives of the people. That was never his intention. Instead, his army quickly gains control over the local population and starts to use the locals to forcibly extract raw materials from the land of Congo, mainly in rubber, whose price was going up during the Industrial Revolution, and in ivory. He would put these quotas on the local people that they had to get a certain amount of rubber, and he would instruct his army that if they didn't bring back their quota, that they were to go remove their hands or limbs. This is everyone, men, women, and children who are being forced to work for King Leopold and getting their limbs removed if they don't meet the quota. So Leopold starts extracting huge amounts of wealth from the Congo, and he uses this new money to build big shiny things back in Belgium, including this big beautiful park and archways that I used to bike past all the time when I lived in Belgium, or this beautiful train station in central Antwerp. Wait a minute, that train station looks kind of familiar. Yeah, that's me showing Henry the clock tower in this train station. I had literally no idea that this train station was built on the blood of people in the Congo. Oof. Okay, so I know you're wondering, what does this terrible story have anything to do with vaccines and Johnson & Johnson and the pandemic? Here it goes. Buckle up. So while Leopold is doing all this terrible stuff in the late 1800s, almost the 1900s, something happens in neighboring Uganda. An epidemic breaks out of this mysterious disease called sleeping sickness. This is what they called it. They didn't really know what it was, but Leopold catches wind of the fact that there's a disease spreading into the Congo where he has all these people and this giant operation for wealth extraction, and he sort of freaks out. He's like, my whole wealth operation might get wiped out by this random epidemic. So he decides to put out a cash prize for anyone who can go down and devise a solution or a remedy to this sleeping sickness. And then he starts to invest in actual researchers and scientists to go down to the Congo and start studying tropical diseases to make sure that nothing catches him by surprise and wipes out his operation. Okay, well, eventually the world catches wind of all the terrible things that King Leopold II is doing in the Congo, and they start to mount pressure against Belgium, the country, and the actual government of Belgium to put an end to this. It's 1908, and finally the Belgian government is like, dude, stop, like, you're done. And they officially take Leopold out of the driver's seat, and they annex the Congo for themselves, and the Congo becomes an official Belgian colony for the first time. But these scientists and researchers who Leopold set up to start looking into tropical diseases, they didn't leave. They stayed. They kept doing this work, and they actually started to make some really important breakthroughs. They established an official state-run organization called the Prince Leopold Institute for Tropical Medicines, an institution that was leading the world in understanding tropical medicines and teaching research and study about this topic. This organization was based permanently in the Congo as well as in Belgium. Fast forward a few years and the Congo officially declares independence from Belgium.
With political independence from Belgium, control of the entire Congo was turned over to what is called the Central Congo Government with headquarters in Leopoldville.
By this time, all of the holdovers from the King Leopold days are sort of gone, and now the Institute for Tropical Medicine is actually like a legitimate institute that is doing groundbreaking, cutting-edge research and study on all sorts of pathologies and viruses and parasites and diseases in this region. They're basically leading the world in tropical diseases and understanding them. They moved their headquarters from Leopold's house in Brussels to the city of Antwerp, where that beautiful but terrible train station is. And they sort of turn into like a school, like an institution where they're training researchers to then go out and work in the real world. Okay, so here's where it starts to really connect with modern day. You have the Institute of Tropical Medicine, which was effectively built from King Leopold's operation in the Congo. A lot of the researchers and students from the Institute of Tropical Medicine were graduating and moving on and joining particularly one pharmaceutical company that was a Belgian pharmaceutical company that was down the road from the Institute of Tropical Medicine. This pharmaceutical company was called Janssen. And as researchers from the Institute of Tropical Medicine joined Janssen Pharmaceuticals, they continued to do that groundbreaking work around the world, developing many of the medicines that the WHO considers essential medicines.
Vaccines, serums, medicines, and drugs.
They continue to do work in the Congo, for example, where just recently they developed the vaccine for Ebola in the Congo.
A Belgian doctor was part of an international team that was called Tuyembuku in the heart of the Democratic Republic of Congo.
This is their old stomping grounds, where so much of this understanding of different viruses and parasites and diseases was founded during the King Leopold days. But instead of the colonizing efforts of the early 1900s, now these institutions are actually doing really good work and actually saving lots of lives. In 1960, Janssen Pharmaceutical, which is full of all these Institute of Tropical Medicine researchers, gets purchased by a New Jersey company called Johnson & Johnson.
Made only by Johnson & Johnson, the most trusted name in surgical
And yes, this pharmaceutical company, Janssen, which is now a division of Johnson & Johnson, was the actual company that developed the miracle COVID-19 vaccine that is saving the world today.
Today, Janssen Pharmaceuticals, part of healthcare giant Johnson & Johnson, announced this.
The chairman of Janssen, by the way, is a graduate of the Institute of Tropical Medicine. Their long legacy in the Congo and their focus on scientific research around tropical diseases is what gave them the capability to be able to step up to the task and create a vaccine for COVID-19. In other words, this led to this, led to this, led to this, led to this.
The first J&J doses expected to go into Americans' arms within 24 to 48 hours.
Again, we think it's really important for our country and the world.
Okay, so I know this sounds like I'm doing some sort of like expose on Johnson & Johnson and Janssen and their like dark past. I'm not. The work that they're doing today is amazing. It is saving so many lives. The Institute of Tropical Medicine is like an amazing public health institution that does really, really useful work for saving many lives around the world. And yet, when you trace back the roots of why this institution exists and the original motives for it, they're pretty up.
His 23-year reign was so brutal that the population halved, while Leopold and his men amassed huge personal fortunes.
What this story teaches me is just how impossible it is to find an institution that wasn't founded on some bloody dark past. The country I live in and the democracy that I am proud of is founded on the blood of stolen people from another continent. How do I evaluate something that I think is good when I really understand that the backstory behind it is terrible and bloody and horrific? The fact that a life-saving, game-changer vaccine has a legacy that is based on a greedy, horrific king massacring a bunch of people in the Congo is a really uncomfortable tension. But if you look close enough, it's one that exists in nearly everything around us.